Yeah.
Hello, everyone. I'm Edward. I am the Liminalities Director for Ego. We have with us Eric and Brian from Evil Genius Gaming. They Brian is the spearhead, I believe, of Intergalactic Heroes. Um, and I am waiting for that to hit the backing because I do plan on backing
Yeah.
it. Um,
You and us both.
uh,
Yeah.
Uh, I've backed pretty much everything except for
Don't say it.
well, so I didn't back all of the cinematic adventures the
Ah.
first time around. I did end up getting them all, but that's something completely different. Um, and just have at it.
So we were talking, but right before we hit record, we were mentioning about kind of what brings us about to kind of inspire us to do, like where is the starting block for building a world? And I wanted to basically say that it kind of varies. It depends whether or not you're doing something that is following in the footsteps of something else, like you're trying to kind of, I don't want to say recreate another world, but like take your own spin on someone else's creation. Or if you're trying to completely do something that no one's ever heard of before, or at least you think so, which as a creative in this space, there are very few things that have never been done before. And in fact, you can almost always find something that is close. When you start going down that path, and be like, I wonder if anyone's ever, done a world that's based off of animatronic food. Yeah, let's do animatronic food, and then go, oh man, there's like a whole series of movies in France about that. So,
Yeah.
it just kind of depends on what you're trying to go with, and then you set yourself your limits. Like you set I've always called them guardrails and guidelines, because nothing is ever fully set in stone unless it's by a licensor or by something that someone who has a legal precedence over what you're doing. But you want to make sure that you stay within your realm, like what you want to be doing, rather, because otherwise you could end up going, especially, not that a lot of us might have attention problems, and we might go off on tangents from time to time, but creation often will go, and then, like, a week later you go, well, I've written an entire chapter about a thing that I didn't know I wanted to do,
Mhm.
and now I've got to go back to what I was doing. So it all just kind of depends on what you're trying to create. But more than anything, it's just got to. God, I'm going to sound like such a stupid artist. It has to be inspired. You have to. You can't just sit down and go, I'm going to make a thing. What's that thing? You'll never get there. It'll end up just always being the same as something else, because you aren't creating something. You're just sort of going, I need to put words on a page. I need to get words on a page. You just got to find your inspiration. Eric?
Yeah. Well, I should say that, yeah, like Brian, it really depends how you're coming at things. So let me tell you a little bit about the way that I operate, because I am always called in to these things later than the first creative process. I don't know almost any. I don't really think I know of almost any great IP that starts with a world. It starts with the idea for a great story. And then after that, it's like, I want to tell another great story.
Yeah.
And I want it to be in this world. So it gets told, and things get a little more complicated because all of a sudden things got to be a little more consistent. By the time you create three stories, you have this triangulation going on. That's generally when I'm called in to kind of construct the world that goes underneath these stories. And so I'm just going to talk for a second about how I put this together or how I think about it. And usually, I try to create a world that supports a meta story, a very large story arc. I usually talk to the creatives about that. Where's the story arc going? And then you have to really like to get into the details of, like, oh, so this thing blurps green goo. Where does the green goo come from? Are there the chemical do you have the chemistry behind it to be able to make green glue? If it eats birds but there's nothing flying in the sky, how does that work? And if you want to have faster than light travel, how are you going to do it? And so creating a world is something I just absolutely love doing, but it involves a lot of stitching together of things. And I got into this because I used to teach comparative mythology, and I'd have a lot of students who were gamers coming through, and they wanted to create their own epics, and their long campaigns. And a lot of those creating an IP or a longer campaign that belongs to one world um, is kind of like an epic cycle. In that, like if I used to teach about the Trojan cycle and Ulster cycle and the Mycenaean cycle, all these cycles. And epic cycles are these big meta stories that nobody tells the whole story. Even in Greek literature, we don't have any tale of the Trojan War. We have a tale of 21 days when Achilles gets mad, 20 years as Odysseus gets home, several tragedies that have characters that operate in the Trojan War, a few mythological references and examples, but there's no whole story of the Trojan War. But the people who create these stories know the story and they tell a story out of it. And that's what you're doing when you're creating these adventures out of a world. But that world has to support that story. And the I mean, people in this industry are the most creative people I've ever met. And they have wonderful ideas that just come banging out of their head somehow, like Athena out of Zeus's head. And but not every great idea belongs to the same world. And that's one of the hardest play things for people that love their IPs to accept. They just
Absolutely.
think, I got this great idea. And, yeah, like even Brian and I've been loving working with Brian and Goober and Paul on the Throne World saga. And we have things kind of set up, not to like no spoilers here, where there are some, for example, you can come up with all kinds of crazy existential threats.
Yeah.
They're diseases or they're Borgs or they're like nanobites or they're like, flaming comets of doom. And but not every existential threat belongs in the same world. You can't,
Yeah.
otherwise you don't really have a world anymore. You just have a cacophony of different.
Yeah.
So the consistency is where the world builder comes in and has to work with the creatives to kind of ask, okay, if this species lives on this part of this world, how did that take place? Or and what do they eat? And do they eat the people down in the canyons? And if they do, what are the people in the canyons doing about that? And so you end up having to create a kind of, oh, I don't know. You have to think systematically if you're going to create a world. Now, if you're doing just a small campaign, it doesn't really matter that much.
Yeah.
You can be consistent on there. I've come in on other projects when you want an IP to be able to have uh, an RPG, a video game, a comic, a movie, a television series, maybe. So that world has to be substantial enough to support all those kind of media presentations for a long time. Hopefully. I mean, I hope Intergalactic Heroes turns into a TV series, a comic book,
That'd be
five
super great.
movies. Oh yeah. Well, it would, and it's a wonderful universe. But um, I I even start at the kind of I don't know, metaphysical level when I ask some people about the a universe. Is this a universe that's cyclical? Is it going to end someday? Because that sets that whole thing into context. Or is it open ended? Is it determined?
Yeah.
You know, is there fate and oracles that are just going to show what this have? That changes the way people interact. Um, is it a moral universe? Because some people like to create worlds that teach a lesson. Or is it, are you more kind of existential in that? And maybe that seems really frou frou, but those ideas behind the cosmology of these things matter. They really, really matter.
Well,
You
and I
probably
think
won't. Yeah.
I think there's a the line between world building and adventure building. I mean, they're
Mm,
similar, but they're definitely different. You could have an adventure set on a place set in the inside that world that doesn't deal with all of that information that you're given,
no.
but
Uh-huh.
someone who's writing that adventure, it is really good for them to have that information,
Yeah.
the backing, the stuff that's behind there, because it will also help make this adventure, make this story or this campaign or whatever's being created in that world. It will make it gel better if it understands all of those facets before they ever sit down and start to try and put together their individual stuff.
Yeah. Hmm. I agree.
That's he blew my mind. Uh, um, so there was a this is a specific question about IGH, but the question goes, what forms of transportation between star systems is there? Um,
Mm.
like you know how in Star Trek
Mhm.
it's warp drive. Star Wars, it's
Has hyperspace,
hyperspace. Uh, even
40K has the warp. Yeah.
right,
Yeah. Or
and
wormholes. You know.
Babylon 5 had like warp gates and stuff or something
Mhm.
like that. I think. I don't know. It's been a long time since I've
Stargates. So, Jackals just mentioned Stargates. Yes, which is basically just a physical tying together of wormholes. Um,
Yeah.
so in IGH, and I think that this is a good time for us. I mean, I know this isn't a panel on IGH, but we're the question was
We're
asked.
working on this now, and we're
Yeah,
working on it.
this is the world that we are building.
Yeah.
There is a there is a difference between IGH and the Throne World Saga. The Throne World Saga is the world that we are building to serve as kind of the tent poles for IGH. But IGH as a system allows you to, if you want to play your Star Trek game, we've got enough stuff in there that you should be able to put it together. Some things you'll use, some things you won't. Some things you may have to homebrew. The Game Master's Guide will help a whole lot with that. Goob has done a phenomenal job of making it a little bit more of an open sandbox book to help people be like, well, I couldn't find this in the player's guide and it doesn't belong in Throne World. How do I do it? That's going to be a book that's going to help with that.
Yeah.
But in Throne World, specifically in the Throne World Saga, faster than light travel is performed by harnessing the tide. If you've read through the beta document at all that we put up last year, the tide is kind of our multiversal energy force of thing that is trying not to use any trademark material.
That is so cool.
Yeah, that is so cool. But it's kind of this energy that flows through everything. It ebbs and flows, and somewhere along the line, while we were putting together IGH, and we wanted the tide to represent. I mean, obviously, because the main toolbox, we want people to be able to emulate mysticism from some of their star operas and things. So we kind of worked that into several of the classes and some of the way the system works. But as we decided to move away from what IGH originally was and into its own foundation IP, we decided to make the tide more important. It is more of it rather than I'm just going to come out and say it, rather than it being the force, it's more than
Right.
that.
Yeah.
It is an actual just universal energy that gets tapped into, and somewhere along the lines, Eric came up with the term for there's a physical material that allows starships to basically take juice from their engines, force it through that. I realize that's going to be memed. Force it through force it through this astium catalyst, and
Mhm.
it basically harnesses the power of the tide to kind of push the boat faster, push the ship faster to faster than light levels. And it allowed us to create faster than light travel in a way that's different than just hyperspace or warp speed. There's not just a dilithium crystal that oh, the dilithium's broken. We still have our own way of harnessing into that and doing and going into that. But it also means that we were able to, again, back to world building. There's a whole lot of naval and oceanic terminology when it comes to the star field spacefaring type stuff in Throne World, and it allowed us to use the tide as almost kind of the ocean that spacefaring is happening on, if that makes any sense. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah,
That's pretty cool.
I'm really, I think the way that we've worked out the tide and faster than light travel, I think is pretty unique. I don't really recall anything like it. And one of the things that I'm really excited about this particular world is that usually in space travel, it's always point A to point B, right? You just figure out a way to go faster, but it's always the same line. Even if you go into a wormhole, it leads directly to someplace. In this particular universe, the tide is like different currents that you would sail on. And if you think about that, it changes the way faster than light travel can happen because you can't go backwards. So you can't take a tide current from Tacoma to Seattle and then just come back on the tide current because it only goes one way. So you have to have navigators, you have to have cartographers, you have to have people that know how these tide currents wend their way through the universe, and that's part of the mystery that will gradually get involved. But I think it's awesome that these happen in different ways. So sometimes in this universe, you could take it. Yeah, you can go faster than light travel, but maybe it would be just better to put your impulse engines on and go the 1 parsec over there because you'll get there faster.
Yeah.
So you may go faster, but you may not get there faster. And I think that opens up all kinds of crazy possibilities for kind of the romance of sail combined with space travel.
Well, and it allows us also to do things like have space pirates.
Yeah.
Whereas that has always been something that you have to, as soon as you have something that is like a wormhole between systems, if you just basically Dune's folding of space, guess what? There's no space pirates in Dune, and that's because when space is folded, you're there, you're at the place. There's no way to catch someone off guard because they just folded space and they're there. A lot of Stargate type things, it's hard to recreate that concept. But for those of us who are old, who remember things like ice pirates and some of those the stylings of a smuggler that jumps onto someone else's ship, again it's that sword and sorcery swashbuckling thing. If you can bring that into a spacefaring game, it makes starships more than just a means to an end to get someplace. It becomes a new resource and a new arena in which you can create entire scenes and campaigns on. Oh, we have questions.
Yep, there's some questions, but I was letting you guys kind of finish that train of thought out. So
You
there is
gotta curb me, otherwise I will never shut up.
Yeah.
so I don't even know if you guys can really talk about this because the question is, if I remember correctly, IGH came out of the Rebel Moon cinematic thing that had licensing issues. Um, can you talk about how that transition evolved?
Yeah, no, it's
Yeah.
no secret. It's no secret what happened. We had the Rebel Moon. We had the agreement with Netflix and Zack Snyder to create the Rebel Moon universe alongside the game, alongside the movies, alongside comics and all sorts of other things. Which honestly, for anybody who knows me, that's what drew me. Actually, what brought me to Evil Genius.
Me too.
I was just Eric as well. Dave, during my interview with Dave was like, "Hey, so are you a fan of, do you know Zack Snyder?" And I laughed because I am a card carrying Snyder cult. Like I have Man of Steel tattoo, like like the whole 9 yards. And I'm like, yeah, I might be aware. And he's like, well, let me have you sign this NDA and we'll get involved. And so that was this Rebel Moon project. And it's honestly one of the highlights of my career, was getting to work with him and
Yeah.
get a chance to help flesh out some of these aliens that, now we're having to go different directions. But it was an absolute joy, and it will be a highlight of something I'll never forget. Things did not end up well. There were some disagreements with Netflix. All in all, we ended up high-fiving and handshaking, and it's a negotiation. No one leaves happy. But they got to keep the story stuff that we had written for them. We got to keep the game. That's effectively the end result. Now, the transition from what was Rebel Moon into Intergalactic Heroes / the Throne World Saga, that is a much longer story. Initially, the goal was just to make an absolute neutral, just sandbox style game using the sci-fi rules that we had made. But when I sat down and started looking at it, there was so much Rebel Moon in that manuscript that if we were going to have to scrub all that out anyway, we needed to replace it with something, or we were going to end up having the most boring book of all time. Because unlike Everyday Heroes, which is based in a modern day or just kind of a general action, if you got a bigger gun, cool. Nothing wrong with that. It's a lot harder to go, okay, well, we know we want to create aliens, but if we make aliens, they have to, similar to what Eric was saying earlier about world building, they have to have a root in something. Otherwise, you're just making, okay, this is Rubber Suit Alien 1, Rubber Suit Alien 2, and you're leaving it completely up to the players to build everything for you. And that's it's gonna create kind of a boring book. You're almost gonna have like GURPS without any flavor added at all. And so I went to Dave and was like, all right, so I have an idea. Let me see if this is doable. And I was like, let's just put a chapter at the end. It started out as just a chapter. Let's just do a chapter at the end of the player's guide that is the setting that you can use all of our stuff with. And he was like, all right, cool. And we wrote it together. We started putting it down, put it together. And I don't remember which convention it was at. It may have been a Gen Con or a Gamehole Con, probably a Gamehole Con, because that's where I do most of my like showing stuff for the first time. I ran like 3 games in the Throne World Saga using the beta rules, and it went over really well. And at least one of those messages got back to Dave. And Dave was like, all right, so you've put together a world. And I was like, I might have some notes. There might be some notes written down. And it swelled into a much larger project. And then shortly thereafter, Eric hops in and starts to take some of because when I say notes, I mean scribbled down index cards. Like no, my note process is madness. But Eric is fantastic at taking. I'll write 3 quick sentences about something that I know I need to have in the game because it's something that I've used in a plot point somewhere in my notes. And Eric will turn that into 6 paragraphs of cohesive material that makes more sense in the whole than my scatter notes ever did. And that's how, as we started getting closer and closer to creating, originally the Intergalactic Heroes was going to be one gigantic book. And then we're like, no, we need to split it into 2 books for the Game Master's Guide. And then we got a little further and it was like, actually, we probably should do a 3rd book. And that 3rd book should be focused completely on the Throne World Saga. Even though it's Intergalactic Heroes and everybody can use it, this gives us a chance to focus really on what our world is about. And then somewhere along those lines, Dave had Eric start putting together an actual world Bible for the Throne World Saga that goes beyond what a regular game book creates. I mean, it really has time. It went from an awesome opportunity to work with Zack Snyder to this literal library of stuff that we're creating for this game. And now Dave's talking about adding more stuff to the Intergalactic Heroes family that we can't talk about yet.
Yeah, that we can't talk about yet.
Well,
And
I'm looking forward to that now. So uh, that's cool. So there was a question, are we talking about creating alternate Earth stuff or are we talking about stellar worlds? I think it's kind of a little bit of both, Randy, but uh, in this particular instance, we were talking about stellar worlds because Intergalactic Heroes and the Throne World Saga. Um, but I think that same kind of thing, not that I really know much about it, but it sounds like those same kind of concepts can still be used in creating alternate Earth.
yeah, I think we can take on a couple of the like with Randy and then also Casano. Um, I think I can answer a bit of both here. And then the same things kind of apply if you're going to do alternate Earth things. You know, if you're going to have whether it's going to be apocalypse or whether it's going to be an alternate history in some kind of way, you have to, if you're going to develop very many stories out of it, and I hope you do, because the more stories out of a gray world, the better the world this is. And but you have to go back and ask those questions as to I want this to be this way up here. I want the this to happen, and then you have to think about how did it get that way? You know, what happened, and then why did that happen? And how come these people have these resources but not other resources? And if they don't have those resources, where do they go to be able to get food or whatever it is? And like if you have just a city, um, cities are there where they are for a reason. You know, the people just don't go, you know, or beings don't go around the earth and just go, oh, well, this looks like a great place for a city, unless there's resources and water and things that people need, and then cities grow out of that. So each city, you know, if you travel around the States or anywhere, Europe or Asia, each city has a real kind of character and backstory. And knowing that for your city is what's going to make your city feel gritty or vibrant or super cool. You know, the more flavor you can do that, the better.
Yeah, Cusano asks specifically about what important things to focus on and what information is too much to focus on. I recently did an essay for Goodman Games, one of their books coming out, about how to create adventures and how to create campaigns. And my section in that book was about what I call tent poles. In tent poles are specifically things when you sit down and go, okay, what do I want my players to experience and what my players to understand? And if you have too many tent poles, you're going to end up just basically dictating to your players. They're not playing a game; they're just listening to you tell a story. But
Right.
those tent poles are. Eric mentioned the cities don't spread out for a reason. They have to, or they don't spread out for no reason. They have to exist for some reason. But in your world or in your alternate Earth, that reason could be nonsense. That reason
Right.
could literally be this city sprung up because the people who got to this shore, this is where they planted their flag. They didn't realize that it was horrible and the land is awful and the marshland is filled with leeches that eat all of your spinal fluid. But they did it because and that's your tent pole. Your tent pole is this history of the city, and maybe there's
Right.
chunks of the city that talk about the fact that we were really stupid for staying here. We should have moved. But the what information is too much, I think it comes down to your relationship with your players. How much do you want to give them and how much do they want to receive? There's a difference between having it available, having the information that they can seek out, and actually being like, no, this is all necessary information. You must know all of these things about this city. And there's also, from a player standpoint, there's the metagaming aspect of how much would my player, my player grew up in the streets. I'm a gutter rat. I have known three things, and two of those things are crime. I don't know anything about noble society other than the fact that they suck. Pontificating and telling that person everything about noble society during the middle of a game when their character's probably going, I know nothing about this. Then
Yeah.
then
Okay.
that's where you got to find that fine line, is whether the information is available or force fed. What is the book that I wrote about tentpoles? They did one a few years ago. It was called like Better How to Build Better Adventures, I think was the first one. And then it's a sequel to that. And I think it comes out maybe this summer. It's 2026. Time kind of blends together. But it's the second book in that series is where I did the tentpole essay. Yes, How to Write Adventures That Don't Suck. That was the first one. I had nothing to do with that book, but Joe reached out to me to be part of the second one, which I think is coming out this summer. I'm pretty sure.
Nice, nice. So there's something for all of us that are hoping to build our own worlds too. And adventure should probably snag.
Yeah, and the thing I would just add on this, it just depends kind of how deep you need to go in order to tell the kinds of stories and the numbers of stories that you want to tell out of this setting. If you just want to tell, if you just want an adventure that's just created a setting for one adventure, there's not there's not too much to tie up
Yeah.
in the background. But if you want to have like Grit City and you want to have your players go on an extended campaign, or if you want to build several different kinds of stories out of there, then you as the creator have to figure out the kind of undercurrent to be able to keep things consistent. And
Absolutely.
your players won't know it, yeah, but it's the creator creating those stories who knows it, and that's what gives the writer the kind of detailed insight into that world to make it really real and vibrant.
And the player may very well separate the adventure from the background and may want to do that digging. It's the difference between
Yeah.
reading a book, going to see a movie, and then go into like Barnes and Nobles and looking for that behind the scenes coffee table book.
Yeah.
You know, the I want to know the thing about that cantina alien in Star Wars that no one he didn't even get a line. He barely got a gesture, but I know that whole story because I went and bought that book because it felt like a lived-in setting. And I think that's the difference, is having that information ready as part of the world building is good. And then hopefully the players will want that information over time. Players and then game masters and readers and other creators.
Yeah,
Which cantina?
and as the creator too, you at some point you have to decide if other people are going to use this world, what am I not willing to let go? You know, that one a world Bible or whatever is so important for establishing your canon, because that's where you get to decide this is my original. This doesn't get changed,
Yeah,
and hopefully you get paid for it or recognized for it. So, but yeah, that's the only that if you want canon, then you have to establish kind of a world and a list at least of things that cannot be changed.
How do you know you are doing too much when world building?
Tom has just asked the hardest question a creative can
Question of
ever
all.
and never answer.
Yeah.
For me, it's whether or not I have either overstepped the word count deadline. Because so
There are
from a
constraints.
creative standpoint, a lot of times this is something that a lot of people don't know. This is a how to make the sausage thing. Is a book is often planned by its word count, which is planned by its layout dress, which is planned by how long it's going to take at the printers and editors, and there's a lot of stuff that goes into the back end of a book. And if you write too much, it is possible that you throw off the numbers, you throw off the date, you throw off the scheduling collectively. Sometimes you can make adjustments. Sometimes you can go, all right, well, you know what? We'll cut a few pictures out and throw those extra paragraphs in because they're absolutely sweet and we need them. From a just like kind of general world building view, I don't believe that there is doing too much. I think you can absolutely fill it's about what you give to others and how much of them. It's not about creating too much, it's about shoving too much at them, but having it available and having it created, there's nothing wrong with that.
No.
It just comes down to the other stipulations of, is it a publication? Do you have an editor or a proofreader or something like that that also has to stick by a schedule? Those are the moving parts that I think it has nothing to do with the world building and everything to do with the product. If you're just world building, like if you're just creating the account of information to then disseminate out into various ways, or if there's no maximum because you're creating like a cloud of information, like it's not necessarily going to be bound in a living document, if you will. Then no, I don't think there's necessarily too much, so long as everybody who is using it understands that, like Eric had said, some of that stuff that's putting on there might not be common knowledge, not every character knows every facet of everything that's being written down in this book or this world, this pile of information. Eric?
Yeah, the I would say you can't. Part of it is like you're done or you're doing too much when you're so bored with yourself, and you're just you're done. So I mean that happens sometimes. Otherwise, I'm the kind of person who just keeps creating in the world. I love to play in worlds, and I'm really fortunate because most of what I do is on a Google Doc that informs other people's publications. So there's no limit there, except that I can't keep going on one world when I have two others that are like need to be written. And but I think I think when you do, I'm not right. I don't think there is too much. It's really about how much you plan to give away and how you
That's
use your information.
the only other thing that I think that might be too much, and I'm putting that in quotation marks. I'm not sure if it falls under too much or just maybe kind of the style that I prefer of world building, is don't answer all the questions.
Every questions. Yeah.
You want to leave something open ended for other people to, if it's that kind of world. If it is literally you're just creating a canon thing for a series of like 6 novels, no one else is going to ever, like this is the thing. But in the case of a gaming world, or a world that you think is going to be used by other creators, you need to also be able to give them some space to flex and do their own. Whether it's you create planets that have a name and maybe a species that's from there, and that's it. I don't whatever, nothing else about that. We'll let somebody else handle that. Or if it's a more existential question of, are there gods? Are they real? Do we know if they're real? Do we make them real? Like that's where you have to kind of set your own rules. But I do think that that's the closest thing to doing too much, is if you answer all the questions and leave no room to play in the sandbox, because you're just gluing all your Legos together and being like, this is the way it is. I think that that's the closest thing to doing too much, in my opinion.
Yeah, closing all the loophole, taking the mystery out of a world takes the fun out of it, takes the
Yeah.
creativity out of it.
That makes sense. You don't want to like, as you said, glue the Legos together. You want to be able to let somebody take them apart and kind of twist them just a little bit to change it, just to make it their own, but still have it be like your setting, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, yeah, and going back to the city, the people that show up like the Romans on the shore, and we're going to build our little city here, and we don't realize that it's terrible, and we have to like struggle or whatever. You have to in that kind of maybe there's a subterranean part of that.
Yeah.
Maybe there's something down there. Now, if you want to be the one that decides what's down there, then in a world Bible you would specify that. Or if maybe you just want to say there's this other city that the city competes with, and give a couple of guidelines as to what those other people are like, and then let people play around. I mean, you want to excite people to create out of your world. Yeah. Unless you're the only one, like Brian, you're going to create like 5 different novels. You get to create your whole world.
Yeah. Then it's
Hug it to
your
yourself.
sandbox, and you can do whatever you want. But yeah.
Yeah.
The
Oh,
writing guide in the last panel.
we talk about the EGG third-party license.
Man.
Um, as far as I know, Eric, you might know more about this than I do. Did Dave ever actually put together a third-party license, or is it just? I know that they
I
can
think
use
there is one.
there is one at
There,
this
there,
point.
I think
there.
there is one for Sidekick.
Well,
Yeah, there's
there.
one that's on the website, and then it's through Sidekick. You have to agree to certain things if you're in the creator mode.
I
Yeah,
know that we had we have the right to say no if you put something that's terrible up there, but
Right.
that's I honestly, I've been so wrapped up with IGH for the last year. I don't know enough about the third party license stuff because everything that I've been, all the words to page for Evil Genius has been IGH for me. Well, and a
Yeah,
couple of
and
sidekick.
generally those kind of requests, if you have questions, those go straight to Dave. I mean, he usually handles people's ideas like that and is always really accommodating as far as coming up, either going, yeah, that sounds a great idea, or like that sounds like a great idea if we were to do it this way, or you can't touch this rail over here.
Yeah, more than anything, Dave wants to make sure that you have you have the arena to put your stuff out there. So
Yeah.
if you've got something that you've got an idea that you're like, I'm not sure if this works this way. I mean, obviously, the two big things, the two big things from just in a creative space period is don't write in a controlled someone else's IP.
Yeah.
Like for obvious reasons, don't put together a we'll say a Pacific Rim uh, third party thing and then try and put it up on Sidekick because licensing is going to get in the way of that because you're trying to profit off of something that is a controlled IP. But something like the Redemption, like the Redemption
Yeah.
HQ, Nacho House, that's all Evil Genius owned stuff. So if you
Right.
wanted to set something in that world, then yeah, I would say reach out to Dave and be like, hey, I've got this great idea for Nacho House, meets Transformers Mecha Nacho 2000,
Yeah.
and put it on Sidekick. And I'm sure if there's any kind of legality issue, Dave would point that out. But he would also probably high five the hell out of you for coming up with something cool to put on Sidekick, because that the whole point of
Right.
this is to just kind of create cool things for people to use and bring people to the Everyday Heroes system, so that way we can get them to play more and more of our stuff as that library grows.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know that the redemption stuff is really open to development. We are doing a redemption world Bible. That's one of my things that keeps like nagging at me back here, like, but and that'll be fairly schematic, so that it allows people to be able to really just create all kinds of great stuff.
um,
That's
And,
that's
and
that's a place that actually we could use more content.
Yeah. And we were really fortunate in the way that we shaped up season 1 with the kind of spoilers for anyone, turn away from your mute me right now if you haven't played through season 1.
Yeah.
But there's a multiversal aspect that is opened up. And so there's ways for people, if there's a setting that you want to play in, if there's something you want to do, you want to write for and try to tie it to the redemption story, there's ways to do it. Like just because it might not fit into the running down to the street to the Nacho House and go be a spy, it doesn't mean you can't make a really cool thing and tie it into what Eric and Curtis and those guys are doing with redemption, because
Yeah.
it's very open-ended and very cool. Trademarked.
It's so cool.
yeah.
It's so cute.
Yeah.
So on that redemption thing, say somebody wanted to write adventures for like the agency.
The agency files collectively are I made those for Evil Genius as a way to emulate other science fiction properties. We will say some age-old stories involving guys with dark glasses and black suits.
Yeah.
Um, And I think that it would be unbelievably cool if people did
Yeah.
agency files style adventures. I mean, Dave, the whole point of all of these things is to tie people back to enjoying the things that are all collectively on Sidekick and out in the world and whatnot. So I think it would be awesome if someone put together. I know so. A dear friend of mine who sadly passed away last year was planning on writing an Intergalactic Heroes / Agency Files adventure that we were going to do at conventions. That was basically a Flash Gordon, a like straight up rubber suit aliens. It's Skip Thunder. He was a rugby player, like the whole 9 yards. And eventually, when I have bandwidth, I'm going to do that for Rob because he can't do it. He's not here anymore. And I would love for someone to take agency files and make adventures. And I'd love to see that. That'd be great. There's nothing.
Yeah,
There is
and
no better. There is no better compliment to a
flattery.
creative.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
is when someone takes the stuff that we've created and wants to pick up that baton and run with it.
Mhm.
It's music. It's absolute wonder.
It is. What if you think about? I wanted to throw in there that one of the things that we do with all of our one shots now is we actually include a little section that goes, "What about my ego?" That gives suggestions for how you might be able to run this particular kind of campaign as an ego, a redemption adventure. And I mention that only because if you're curious about doing that yourself, you can get some suggestions from some of that different material and kind of see how would this setting handle like the everyday rustlers or every westerns or the steampunk stuff or
Yeah.
we got a biker. We have bikers coming up, so a biker gang. So that's a yeah. We'd love for that. We want people to use not only buy our stuff. We want you to make stuff from our stuff.
I mean, for Ego, I did make a mysterious agent, so
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. The couple of ego games I've played where I've had a chance to actually play at conventions, which is far and few between, I have a mysterious agent as well. Agent Jonathan Doe.
oh, mine is
Of course.
Rex Cromwell,
Yeah.
Agent R.
Oh,
Agent R.
awesome.
That's actually reminds me of Vitamin R. Yeah.
Vitamin R. What? Uh,
Vitamin
Yeah.
R.
That's what here in the Pacific Northwest we call Rainier beer.
Oh, gotcha.
oh, gotcha.
Yeah. Yeah.
Randy says, thanks, guys. It's been a blast. It has been a
Thank you.
blast. Thank you
Yeah.
for your questions and stuff.
Yeah. And if you have other kind of questions, I'm very happy to entertain them. Just get a hold of me on Discord or shoot me an email, and I'll help out. I'll help out as I can.
As I said,
So
ping us on Discord. Oh, good.
no, this is my question because it kind of goes along with the third party stuff. So if we have an idea for well, not necessarily an IP, but a series of campaigns that we want to do as a third party person, we would run that by Dave, right? So we could send Dave an email or something. And
And I'd give a kind of an outline of what you want to do. You know,
Mhm.
make sure he can understand what you want to do,
right, right.
Yeah.
because that's the important part.
And then obviously when you have a final product, there will be a pass through to make sure that there's
Yeah.
nothing questionable in it and whatnot. And but like, yeah, no, I think that'd be sweet. Do it, do it, do it.
Yeah.
Well, see, I kind of have to wait for Everyday Arcana to really come out to really work on what I want to work on. uh, or I have
Yeah.
to kind of buy the third party campaign by oh, who are those guys? Um, they're the ones that made Requiem.
Oh yeah, no, I
Oh
was gonna
yeah,
say I was like, there's
yeah,
the third party effectively making things fourth party, building off of someone else's third party stuff. Those chains, those like possession chains, it all eventually leads back to people enjoying stuff using the Everyday Heroes system, and that is in and of itself the big the we want this to be a one big happy family. It's one of the reasons why when we sat down initially with the Intergalactic Heroes and Everyday Arcana as a concept, is we wanted to make sure that those all of these systems that we're building, everything that goes on in bonus features, everything that we're building is all coming back to one worlded building. We're building
yeah,
this kind of this rules library, but everybody plays nice together. It's all about kind of adding the same thing like the cinematic adventures, just sort of added extra stuff onto Everyday Heroes. We wanted our things to be the same idea. Is Intergalactic Heroes, you can absolutely take the classes and the origins and stuff, and I don't. That's up to you as a GM to determine why a Gabar is on Earth working for Nacho House. But
yeah,
rock and roll. He's going to headbutt a lot of shit. Oh, sorry, PG
yeah.
13. I used
Yeah.
our one, but
A
it's
user,
going
yeah.
to be it's going to be everything's as seamless as we can possibly create it by making new rules that are just sort of uh, lenses that you can look at everyday hero systems through rather than a new system that requires you to do a bunch of converting and things. It's one of the reasons why I prefer anytime we start talking about everyday heroes when someone says, oh hey, so it's like D&D or it's 5e. No, it is adjacent and it is inspired by, but it's going to require a little bit of math and a little bit of adjustment, a little bit of elbow grease if you want to try and make a hobgoblin work for everyday heroes. Or vice versa. You want to throw your scrapper into Greyhawk. Like that's something that is going to take a little bit more than just a quick, you know, pass with the pen or oh, it'll work out just fine. It's more than that.
Yeah.
But in our family of products and hopefully all the third party products, that will be the same concept, but going kind of how all of that extra stuff did for 5e with using the player's handbook stuff. We want everybody to all eventually come down to one of our core books, so Intergalactic Heroes or the Everyday Heroes book currently, eventually Everyday Arcana and so forth. Sorry, I soapboxed there for a second.
No, it was great soap.
It was
Made
good.
of high grade human fat.
Yeah.
Well, anyway. um,
I'll say everything I make is made of high grade human fat.
Yeah.
I kind of have a similar thing going on there. Um, any last questions before we close this one off?
No questions. But I will say, I mean, here in what a half an hour, we have another. I'll be on another panel talking about specifically rather than world building. It's about creating within other worlds, within other people's worlds, the cinematic adventure, other licenses, that kind of thing. And I know Eric and I mentioned earlier that you can always reach out to us on Discord. We're generally pretty open book. It might take us a little while to get back to you, but uh,
No, but
I, I will always chit chat with just about anybody. And me personally, you can find me at Brian CP Steele at just about everywhere. Instagram, Facebook, the whole nine yards. Or every Friday, I have my YouTube show, Tales from a Professional Nerd, where I pontificate about something gaming related, or I do an unboxing or something every week. And a lot of times I do when we have a new product at Evil Genius, I'll give an episode specifically to that product to talk about it and how it came about and that kind of thing.
Cool, cool. Um, well, I have no other questions. No one else has any questions. Thank you both um,
This was
for
awesome.
yeah,
that was fun.
it's always fun to hear from
Yeah.
you guys that are, you know, in the trenches for us. So that's why we kind of
Yeah.
built this con in the first place, was to be able to hear from you guys and kind of hang out with you when you guys find time to join a game. Um, and yeah, I will see you
Thank
in the
you.
next panel in 30 minutes.
Yes.
Brian, we'll be moving down to stage 3. Yeah, stage 3
Okay.
for it. Um, and yeah, that's all I have. And
All right. Well,
Okay.
thanks everybody. This was fun. And
Yeah.
again, if you have any other questions that come up later, just reach out.
Yeah. Okay. Cheers.
cheers. Take care, everybody.
Ciao.
Cool.
Bye.
And Eric is gone.
And Eric is gone.